All right. It looks like we are live in both cases. Is that the case? I should have pulled this up before and had everything ready to go. Doesn't matter. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first ever book club for Dragonfly. I'm really excited that you guys are here with me because, as you know from your other clubs, I just love forcing my opinions on media at other people. So since this is our first book club, I just wanted to get something out of the way first, which is how I'm going to run these book clubs from here on out. We have a book club every 3 months. So you have 3 months to read the book. And I have played around with how to do this so many times, but most of the suggestions that come into me are actually fiction books. And so since we have 4 quarters, I've divided them up into categories. So I guess this would be the first one, even though I'm pretty sure it's going to come around again at the end of the year. So it's technically fourth quarter is always going to be some kind of self-help or a creative process book. But the next one that I'm going to do is I'm going to switch it up and do a fiction book. And specifically, I'm going to try and do a 21st century book. So anything that was published after the year 2000. So a more modern fiction book. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to give 3 suggestions and put it up to a vote in the group. So I will post those immediately after this, and you can vote on those. After that, I'm going to try and pick a memoir or a biography of an artist or creative person, and then we're going to do a older fiction book, so something that was published before the year 2000. So I think those are going to be the 4 categories, and each month I will present everybody with 3 options and let everybody pick. So it's not just me telling everybody what they have to read. And as always, there is a suggestion box. So if you have a suggestion either for book club or listening club or movie club, you can always suggest it on there, and it will automatically get added to my list. So that all out of the way.
Alternate by month. 1 month is music club, 1 month is book club, 1 month is what was the movie?
Well, movie and listening club are every month.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yeah, we do them every month. So it's just book club that's every 3 months. Initially, I was thinking about having a nonfiction and a fiction book club, but that's too much for me.
And the only reason why book club is seasonal is because we wanted to give people more time. It's easier to consume a movie and an album within 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's the difference between giving an hour or 2 up versus 7 hours.
Yeah, I would prefer not to feel like I'm back in school.
Yeah. So as soon as we're done with this meeting, I will put the vote out and let everybody look into the newer books, and then we can pick from there. But this month, for our first month, we picked the book that is probably the most talked about book in this club, one that I know Miguel is very familiar with, and that's Atomic Habits, James Clear.
Yes. Thanks everyone for catching us on the replay. If you're watching this after the fact, if you happened to not catch us live, you're more than welcome to still participate in the conversation by adding your comments in the chat, and we can converse and read them later. You can also contribute on the guides tab under this particular guide for book club. So
yeah, in the Facebook group, all of our clubs are listed there for Media Club, and they will always be on there, so you can always comment on them, and I will get a notification at least.
Yeah, and if you are watching this on YouTube, you can get in the Facebook group here.
Sorry, you were pointing up, but on my screen, it's on the opposite side that you were pointing.
You did mirror, same on me.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Very nicely
Yeah.
done.
I forgot I mirrored my screen. You just click anywhere over. No.
All right. So I just wanted to get like general impressions of the book before we started to like get into the actual habits and the methods that he's put in place here. Like I said, I think Miguel has talked about this quite a bit, but how was your experience,
Um,
Beckett?
You know, I had a funny experience reading this book because I feel like a lot of these things I already do. So, like when I wanted to discipline myself into adopting better habits when I was freelance and I was living alone for the first time and like, you know, trying to manage my schedule without another person to motivate me and things like that. I started doing a lot of this just on my own, just being like, how can I be more accountable to myself and, you know, have better habits rather than just like lazing about all day. So
I personally find that like that's kind of what happens with self-help books in general for me is it's like I had all of this information. Like
well,
I knew I know a lot of it just like innately.
I mean, yeah. And also, if you believe in collective consciousness, you do have all the information already. It's just how do you tap into it? And so books are helpful for that.
Yeah, and they're or a good reminder. Or
Mhm.
he even says in the book that he thinks that this isn't like really a self-help book. He sees it as like an operating manual. So um, if anyone out there's read it, it includes a lot of like worksheets that you can download from his site. So
Yeah.
he really tries to
Did
like
some
get
of
that
those.
method and give you homework.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
to send the exercises.
I did one of those a while back. Ooh, can you see that?
Oh,
Actually,
nice.
Yeah.
you know, I didn't have quite the same reaction Beckett did. That I thought there was a lot of new stuff, but I'm probably the most unprepared person here because I haven't gone back to the book since I first finished reading it. And I first got introduced to him. He was on a podcast that Ryan Holiday. Well, he was on a thing together with Ryan Holiday, but I don't think either of them do a podcast. So I don't know how I caught them on video together, interviewing them each other. But it was really, really cool. And I liked the book because it's just practical. So part of the thing about this is, how do you say, the self-help thing, like it's stuff that you do. I think that's a good thing. Um, and I definitely have been able to use bits of this. And I really like his, the best thing I'm doing right now with him is I'm on his once a week email, the 321 email. And that's great because I just like need reminders and stuff. In fact, I love this week so much. I sent it to my friend and one bit of it to my friend in Montreal. So, and then I think he's got a really good Instagram presence. So that's my current experience with James Clear is the weekly emails and his Instagram stuff. So sorry, I didn't do my homework.
No,
No,
I only found out the time with the date and time of the thing yesterday for some reason. It's my
I
own
think
fault.
there's something with me. I might just add you as a Facebook friend, even though I'm not really on Facebook ever, just so that I can make sure that like my messages are getting to you.
oh, was
Oh
I'll make
yeah,
a note.
that I don't think that was your fault. I have like this. I'm really not on Facebook that much, and I have this new thing in Messenger of all these other things that I just never looked at because I always looked in the regular place for Messenger that we've always looked at stuff. And this was in some little cubbyhole that
yeah,
one
they
of
do
the two of
that.
Yeah,
you mentioned.
it might be because I started them because you haven't had the same problem with Beckett, but that's a discussion for for another night.
Oh,
Um,
anyway, but I
I
like it, and it is eminently practical.
um, but speaking of habits and that, I also don't get on Facebook very often. I actually because I have not a lot of things that I do for Dragonfly, but I do have like a set list of things. I actually have like a time slot for it, so I have like a 30-minute thing every week where it's just like, if I have to do Dragonfly, this is when I do it. But if there's like a notification in the meantime, unless it's on something that I posted, I don't know about it. But otherwise, I actually have my email notifications on for Facebook, which works really well when you don't have a Facebook presence. So.
Yeah, my inbox is a mess, so that doesn't help me, although I do get the notifications. But I try to spend at least a little bit of time in the group every week, but I do miss things here and there just because my schedule is so crazy right now.
Yeah.
But
Rebecca, what did you think of the book?
So I actually read this book years ago.
How old is it?
It was released in 2018, so it's not that old. It's like 5-6 years. But I probably read it right around the time that it did come out. I listened to it, and I don't know if I was in a state of mind to like really be accepting of like self-help practices. I think that is a thing of all in its own. So revisiting it, it's probably why I'm like, oh, I had a lot of this information because I've heard it before. I just wasn't quite digesting it. And also, it's been a very popular book for 5 or 6 years. So a lot of the information in it has already been funneled through into other things. But there were bits and pieces of it that I really liked. He has an entire bit close to the end about the boredom of habits that I really liked, and how you kind of get to the point with habits of you have to get past just the boredom of the repetition of it. And that's really like the thing that sets people apart. And I have shiny new hobby syndrome. So it was nice to read something and like actually have a direct quote on there that I can like write down and remind myself that this is a thing that you do.
Yeah, I highlighted some passages because I thought he had a lot of good little nuggets here and there.
Yeah, this is not very, there's a lot more highlights in here than I actually noted. That being said, on the flip side, I don't like his examples.
Really?
Like some of them are fine. Some of them are like very pigeonholed into like a specific, and like if you know like more about it, like the very first one in the book is about like the bicycling team. And he wrote this entire thing before realizing that they were in fact doping. And he wrote a big part of it, and he also put a blog post out about it, but he kept it in there, and then he refers back to it several times later on in the book. And there's like a few scenarios like that. He makes an agriculture reference that's actually just incorrect, and I just know that. So there were times where I was like reading his examples, and I was just like, this is just pandering a little bit, or maybe fluffing out the pages. But I do think that James Clear has like a very good presence online, and he's continually updated it. And this is probably could be have a new edition in the future that has more information on it. And I do think that habit building is important, and I like that he has like a plan to go out about it. So if you haven't read the book and aren't really a big reader, I think you could probably get the same amount of information from his newsletters and the videos he makes online.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I actually didn't know about him. Like I actually hadn't heard of this book until we started talking about it in this group. And I'm big in like the self-help, like I'm a big Louise Hay fan. Like I've read a lot of like oh gosh, what was all my books are packed up. I don't have them here. But I have quite a few along that line. So
yeah. I had a thought and then it immediately left me.
I had a question. I'm just looking at the front cover, and the subtitle is "An Easy and Proven Way to Build Good Habits and Break Bad Ones." I didn't use this to try to break any bad habits. Either of you? That was mostly building.
So I think Yeah, I think my next question for the group is going to be which of these like tips that he has worked. I remember what I was thinking of. And it applies here because he talks about in the book how like not all of these are going to work for everybody. And I think that's definitely the case. And over COVID, I've had the benefit of working from home and having the free reign to figure out what does work best for me. But the thing in here that is to break bad habits that actually works for me is to make it invisible. And probably also the flip side of it, of making things that I want to do, which doesn't always work because I still have not put the wires together for my synth that is right next to me that my hand is on just off screen. And it's been sitting here for like 3 months and I still haven't done that, despite the fact that it's something that's in front of me every single day. So I guess, but in general, for the breaking bad habits, I find that like packing things away has helped.
That makes sense.
Yeah. If you don't want to eat so much chocolate, don't have any chocolate in the house.
I always have the problem of I'm like, oh, we're going grocery shopping. I don't need to buy snacks. And then like I immediately regret that decision.
Yeah.
But
the one thing I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think you're about to follow up on the question that I.
No, I'm not quite that organized. I was just going to talk about something that I did that worked for me.
Okay.
Oh, so I'm going to go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my question.
So along the lines of those 4 things to make behaviors effortless, obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. I did something for attractive that was just so basic that I like still think of, and so I like I have this favorite. I don't have one in front of me. This favorite tea that I get is Moroccan mint tea, right? And it's hard to find. And so I like, I had this behavior that I wanted to do once a week. And I said, okay, on my way back home from doing that behavior, I'm going to treat myself to this Moroccan mint tea, right? And it ended up being something else, depending on what I had in the house or not. And that like is like, that was like really powerful. Like it was something I needed to do, but I avoided doing it. And I was surprised how much that idea of making it attractive helped, because like my logical brain goes, well, of course you should be doing this and you should be doing this on a regular basis and yada, yada, yada. But as soon as there was tea involved, little shiny object, like, oh, right. So it's funny. The thing I like about it, and God, again, I haven't revisited the book in a while, but I felt there was enough science in there to I'm also I used to have a career as a researcher, right? And so when there's no science in there, when there's no logical thinking, I'm like, okay, great, you haven't done your homework. But I thought there was enough in there that I just felt comfortable with the book and trying stuff that I was like, I don't know, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And stuff, a lot of stuff did end up sticking, like that particular example. And the other thing I think Rebecca, you mentioned how he referred to the book, and I can't remember the exact quote, but this thing for me is like, it's like having a thesaurus around. It's like, I'm not going to, I might go back and read it a second time, just because usually when I read something important the second time, I do a better job at taking notes and highlighting stuff. But I'm definitely going to like, oh, Jesus, I'm having this problem. Let's look in the contents and what'll fix that. Okay, chapter 14 at 169, right? And I could easily see that, like just sort of that. It's kind of like a reference for habits. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You could probably even read it that way, meaning you wouldn't have to read it from cover to cover. You could just sort of dive in.
Yeah.
I think I didn't do that. I read it from cover to cover, but that's the value of it to me is that it's not that any one chapter is so super amazing, is that all of this stuff is functional. It seems to work. He's got science where I need science to happen. And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that like what we need from it changes, because you brought up the whole like
Exactly.
make it attractive thing. That doesn't work for me. Even if
Mhm.
something like has a good effect on me, it just doesn't quite stick. Like I have to like force myself through that process. So that law doesn't work for me. It's the make it obvious and make it easy.
Yeah.
The way that I get all my tasks done is I like journaling, so I have like a journal for that. But I also have Notion, which it just automatically opens on my computer. So if I turn my computer on, it brings up Notion, which has my to-do list in it. And like that is the very first thing I see in the morning. So even if I don't want to do anything, I'm immediately confronted with the list of things I probably should be doing.
Mm.
Yeah, and as soon as I put something away, it takes me very little time to forget about it. But in the future, that might change, and in the future, I might need to make things more attractive, and that would make me enjoy them more.
Yeah, I have found also that making it attractive doesn't help me to build habits either. Like if I like decide that I'm going to reward myself for completing a task or something by, I don't know, having a cookie or watching an episode of a show or something like that, that's something that I would do anyway. So it doesn't feel like a reward.
Yeah.
Um, but on the other side of it, breaking bad habits, making them unattractive works really effectively for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's enough in there that most people will be able to find something that works. You know, and the other thing I wanted to add is I still do, I journal every day, and it's sort of half bullet journal and half Ryan Holiday stoic journal, and part this. And so it's easy to integrate into other things I'm already doing. So like one of the things, and I don't know, and again, so it's sort of like I have so many of these things going on, I'm not sure where to give the credit, but how do I explain this? So I have uh, I want to track my fatigue, right? This is a thing I'm dealing with, and my relative health on a daily basis. And so I just turned a thing that used to be part of the bullet journal into that, like the daily thing for thinking about how I'm feeling and how it relates to fatigue, and did I run today, did I drum today, did I do walking today. And I don't know where it came from, but it's I think some of it came from here, because it's now something that I just do every day. And if I skip a day, I can go back and fill it in. And it's longitudinally going to be information that I think is going to be really useful to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a long way of saying I think it integrates well with other things I'm already doing. It's not like, oh, I got to decide if I'm going to bullet journal or do this. It's not like that. It's
Yeah.
sort of like, oh, I can do this to enhance the bullet journal. Or I can do this to enhance the stoic journaling.
Yeah, and I love, as a, organization is hard for me, but I love making lists. So doing the keeping track of things, like the habit scorecard, that was really fun to do. And kind of it gives you a little dopamine boost too when you realize, oh wait, more of these are positive. And most of my negatives are like pitfalls that we all fall into, like, video games, social media, TV. But I realized that I actually have quite a few more good habits that I've built over time just by, doing the systems that he outlines in the book, like stacking and all that stuff. And just for me, after a while, doing the habit becomes its own reward, because not doing it feels weird and wrong. Like, I have a habit of making my bed every morning. And over the Christmas break, I kind of stopped doing that because I got lazy. And then it was like driving me crazy. And then especially when I started working again, I was like, I'm working. This bed needs to be made.
Yeah, that's cool.
I, like
Mm.
Miguel, have problems with fatigue sometimes, and it does not matter how tired I am. If I get into bed and I haven't brushed my teeth, it's the most disgusting thing, and I have to like physically get up to go do it. And I feel like that's along those same lines of like, it does not matter how tired I am. I have to go do this thing.
Yeah.
Um,
I can relate to that, not in that aspect, but like with the health problems that I've had, like just tracking symptoms and realizing what, around what time I'm feeling what way and what that means in my body. And it makes more sense now that I have a way to look back and track that and say, around that time I was feeling that way, and that's why. So.
I should be
Yeah.
doing that more. Maybe I'll have to like make it figure out how to make it a habit using this book. I'm very fortunate that I have a partner who has made that a habit of tracking me.
Well, that doesn't sound creepy, but anyway.
So I should probably be doing that for myself. The other part of this book that I wanted to talk about was and I actually brought up some book club questions, and it was on there, and I was like, fantastic, they've phrased it for me. Is there's a
What do you
quote in
mean
the
book
book,
club question?
like I went online and was like, Atomic Habits book club questions, and like there's a whole bunch of blogs of people who have written their own questions to ask book clubs. And I rarely, whenever I have a book club, I always try to find them and bring them up, and I have like never used them before. But I like this, and it's a good phrasing for a part of the book that I wanted to bring up. And that was his whole idea about how we are just innately structured to do certain things. And the actual quote in there is, boiling water will soften a potato and harden an egg. You can't control whether you are a potato or the egg, but you can decide to play a game where it's better to be hard or soft. And I think he also brings up, I think his thing in there is about Michael Phelps as a swimmer, and then a long distance runner, and how their bodies actually are built for their specific sports. And I think it's a really interesting thing for a self-help book that is all about building habits so you can make anything, like all of your goals, come true, to just suddenly be like, but some of them are going to be easier, and maybe you should considering taking the easy route. Or really, I guess, the things you want to do or the things that you're good at.
Well, and that's also going to make it easier to accomplish. Rather than taking the hard route, you're going to get discouraged more than likely.
I think I've talked about it in this group before, but I actually went to college to become an astrophysicist. And I didn't do that because I failed calculus twice.
I did not know that you did that.
Yeah, it's why like randomly I'll have like I still like reading about physics. I have a lot of physics books and things like that. It's something that I follow a lot of space things and all of that. Anyways, I ended up getting a degree in music.
I like that. Astrophysics.
I was a little bit more predisposed to one of them. So music and art history and more of those social sciences is what my brain functions as. So even though I have this strong interest in like sciences and things like that, I have a problem just like being a researcher in a way.
Well, music is very mathematical. So.
It is, in a different way. It's very pattern based. So I definitely resonated with that a lot more than maybe some other people did, but it's very interesting to think about how you might have these ideas about who you want to be, but they might just be more problems than they're worth, and like kind of having to go through that discovery process.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a scientist. And then I discovered that I have a learning disability that makes math really hard. I can't really read numbers well. So that kind of didn't happen. And
you can join me in the calculus failed. group.
Yeah. I mean, I never even made it to calculus. I failed algebra 2.
Yeah. I still don't quite get differential calculus. Like it
I don't even know what that means.
so.
But yeah, so and then I became a designer.
There you go. Hey, Rebecca, what was the book cup question you were just answering?
It was
Or
technically
was it not a question?
technically the question is about metaphorical examples. But the question that I had was actually there might not have been a question, honestly. I think I
Oh,
just
okay.
wanted to talk about it. I was trying to figure out how to, because I realized that I started the statement and then I never actually asked the question. I just went into
Okay.
talking about my life.
You want to ask the question, or should we just move on? Up to you.
I don't know if I have it framed as a question. I just wanted to bring
Oh,
up the idea of kind of fighting against your natural instincts in a way, and how you can put all of this effort into building habits and just have it not work out. And it's not a question, it's just a thought process to bring to the group.
Well, and people change and evolve over time too. So, like, I was a musician for a long time, and then, I haven't touched music in how long? Since high school, really. So,
yeah, but then I think a book like this works because it's a reference, and then 10, 12 years from now, you'll have either different problems or you'll be enough of a different person that the old solutions aren't working. And I think my sense of it is, not having used this book 10 years into the future, that you could find something in there that would work, right? And that's one of the strengths I see in the book in terms of having it as a reference, right? You know, so I used to live in Portland, and we had like the greatest bookstore in the world with and they were also a used bookstore. So you go to Powell's and trade in all your old books. And I have almost zero books that I don't reread, right? And so, but this one is not going to go to Powell's and help fund another book. It's just not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's something that you're going to keep around and continue to reference.
Yeah. And considering how much I read, I have very few books.
You could definitely put tabs and like index it so that you can reference particular parts when you need it.
I think because he has so many like graphs in there, and also like just the worksheets in general, you could honestly create like your own atomic habits like workbook that might be easier. So I've had this book suggested to me so many times, like I said, but like not just like from people in creative fields. I read it the first time because it was suggested by my boss at the time. But the place where I heard about it the most was I went to like a lot of different therapies. Like I went to like some group therapies, I had individual therapy, and literally anything that I went to, any therapist I talked to eventually just mentioned this book to me. So
Really?
I have a thing over, oops. I have a binder over here that's like all of the papers that I had to do for like therapy, and it's been like a year and a half or 2 years since I've been to a therapist, and I still keep it right by my desk. But because he has so many worksheets, it's like one of those things where I would put it in here or like make my own notes to put into something. And then in the future, if you find that those notes aren't working, you can always refer back to the book. That's just a suggestion, and something that I did consider doing, of printing out all of his workbooks and then putting them into this thing that I keep next to me at all points in time.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I could see the value in that. I could totally see that.
Yeah, because even though it's been like a year and a half since I had to do ACT therapy, or actually I think it's just ACT. I think saying ACT therapy would be like ATM machine.
Everybody does it.
Yeah. It's still useful to like pull those things out and reference them, even though I've been doing it for such a long time.
Mhm.
And trying to find something in a book is not making that an easy habit.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
in the spirit of that.
Yeah.
No, I get that. And that's kind of what he talks about in the book about like building good habits is, doing it in a way that is effective for you.
Right.
And what fits for you
Exactly.
is not going to fit for everyone. So,
Yeah. It's kind of eminently customizable.
yeah.
My other question for this, just as like a little book club thing, is are there any habits that you're looking forward to building using his techniques?
Oh, so I just got off of I had a conference call with my sort of one of my top mentors, my main mentor guy, and um, it's just one of those where you feel like not beaten up, but in a good way afterwards. It's like I have all this stuff now to do that I wasn't focused on before, you know, and I don't know that I need to go into the book and figure out um, a whole new process, but I know like if that has to happen, I'm still absorbing the things I got to work on. But I don't have any doubt that if I needed to, I could figure it out using the book or something really closely related to it. Because I think of him as sort of, you know, in the same orbit as the Ryan Holidays and folks like that of the world, you know. And it gets really hard for me to tell the difference between, you know, that sort of group of folks. But I think that answers your question. But that's definitely what's on my mind right now. It's like, holy cats, how do I put into practice all this stuff, right? And given my current situation, right? And then so it's like eminently customizable. Okay, I could make something work if I really need to come up with some whole new process,
Mhm.
you know. So
Right.
that's my answer. Sticking to
I am
it
looking
for now. Tomorrow it's a different answer.
I'm looking forward to reading again because I had fallen out of that practice after graduating from college because I had to read so much for my degree. Like literally a book for each class every single week. It was
Yeah.
exhausting. So
Yeah.
reading became work. Whereas before that, I was such a bookworm. Like that's why I majored in literature because I loved reading so much and I wanted to be a writer. So, but I had fallen out of it. And like every once in a while, I would pick up a book again and not be able to put it down. But it happened less and less and less until mostly what I was reading was social media, like Twitter, so, which is not high level, literature by any means.
Yeah.
But I have replaced part of my checking Twitter routine with reading because of this book club. So
Nice.
Oh,
Um,
that's cool.
are you trying to just like do it like you have the urge to do something, so you pick up a book instead, or are you like thinking about it like read a page a day?
I started out with like, I'm going to read like such, whatever amount of pages per day, but that didn't work for me. So it's more like if I find myself just scrolling Twitter and not really getting anything of value because there's very little of value on Twitter, then
Wait, Donald Trump's back. Hang on. Before you get too far with that statement, young lady.
Who knows what's real on Twitter anymore?
nothing is real.
Nothing's real on Twitter.
Hey, so Becca, one thing that I do that is closely related to what might be closely related to what you're talking about. I just realized I probably stepped on you. Did I let you finish your thought?
The only last thing that I was going to say is instead, like if I find myself getting bored and just scrolling Twitter mindlessly, then instead I will open up a book, which I keep on my phone, which makes it easy. So
Oh, your book's on the phone.
Yeah.
Oh, you like Audible or actual text?
No, like I have all of my books as PDFs on my phone. So it serves the same like desire to sit on my phone and scroll through Twitter, but I'm reading a book instead. So
All right.
putting James Clear into action, making it easy and obvious.
Where did you get the PDFs for the books?
I'll put it in the chat because it's not exactly legal.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think Alex found.
Alex shared it, yeah.
Yeah.
Can
Alex.
you
found it.
repeat that one more time into the microphone, young lady, please? Speak slowly.
It's not like you're not going to the dark web or anything, but it is a collection of PDFs that people have. So you can find like a lot of older books, but you can't find like brand new books or anything.
Well, not necessarily. I've found like they don't have everything, and it's harder to find fiction than nonfiction.
Yes.
But
I think you can also find like research papers online and things like that. That being said, if you want something that's a little bit more on the more acceptable ways to tell people that you read a book, you can also download Kindle on your phone, and then you would have those, and you can get library books that way.
That's what I was waiting to have my iPad for. And then it came to December was ending, and I was like, shoot, I have to read this book.
There's another example in here that I've realized because Beckett brought up the reading that I have accidentally programmed myself to do, and I didn't realize it until I was like reading the chapter in this book, and I was just like, oh, that's what I did. So this is my work desk, and I try really hard to separate my work and life. And when I say work, I also mean like the art that I create, which in a way I view as my job. I tend to get into like a flow state with it, and if I don't separate it somehow, I will work and it would be terrible, and I'd get burned out very quickly because I don't know how to stop. So I've had to like create pockets around my house. I still like play games on this computer occasionally, but I have a laptop and I'll go sit on my couch, and that means that it's time for me to like work on like stuff that involves writing. I don't know why that's worked like that, but I'm not going to turn, but I can like see it a little bit on the edge of the couch. There's a part of my couch that faces away from the TV, and I have a little like reading chair, like, you know, like one of those cushions that have armrests on it. And if I sit with my back to the TV that way, I suddenly feel like I should be reading. And it's because Ryan would play video games, and I don't like seeing the movement of it. So I would turn my back to the TV to read. And now if I sit there, I will immediately and instinctively be like, boy, what am I reading right now?
Yeah.
And that's something he talks about in this a lot. And it's the same way with like my laptop of if I'm on my laptop, I immediately start thinking about any of my work that has to do with writing. And it's just these weird things that I've realized I've programmed myself to do.
Well, and that's essentially what a habit is, right? Something that you do instinctively without thinking about it. And so if you do it with enough repetition in a certain way, then you'll find yourself like just instinctively going to it if you're in that situation. Like he was saying, like I was just reading the chapter today on the heroin addicts in the Vietnam War. And when they came back, like an insanely low percentage of them relapsed, because it was being in a completely different environment than where they had built that habit.
Right.
That's right. I forgot that story.
Yeah. So that's clearly something that works really well for me for habit building, is to just like
it's human
physical location. Yeah. Yeah. So I read that, and it's not something that I started to do because of this. It's just I was reading it and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, and it's like that's like over vacation, and actually the first week of work when I started back up work, like I found myself, because my desk that I work at, you know, facing this direction, it is the work time. or I do dragonfly stuff, and that's all I do in this position. I use my laptop for other things or my phone, like if I'm doing other, you know, social media or writing or things like that. But if I'm sitting here, I'm looking at my bed right there. And when it was unmade, it was driving me crazy. And I couldn't figure out why. And then it was just because I had gotten into the habit of making it every day and then sitting here to work. And it felt wrong not doing that.
It's crazy how small. I mean, it's called Atomic Habits and talking about tiny changes. But like when I say like working on my computer, like these are all just parts of my couch that I sit on. And the part of my couch that I sit on determines whether or not it's time to watch TV, whether or not it's time to write, or whether it's time to read.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's absolutely insane how small something like that can have a huge effect on how things go.
And I am a very resistant person to, like, if someone tells me, oh, here's what you have to do, I don't want to do it just immediately. And so, like, building habits during quarantine, and, you know, everybody was recommending you have to separate your relaxing space from your workspace, and you have to, you know, set up a little work nook in your house somewhere that is separate from where you relax and all that stuff. And I was like, I don't need to do that. And so I had gotten used to doing everything on my couch. And then I found that it was really hard to be productive. So I started working at my kitchen table, and that kind of became my workspace, but it was still too close. And then when my roommate moved in, it was like I couldn't work in there because that's a shared space, and it was too distracting.
Right.
So then I set up this desk in my room. But it's funny because this is my bedroom. Like, this is definitely where I relax the most. This is where I sleep. But for some reason, facing this side, it's work. And then facing the other way, it's relax. Like, it works. It separates it in my mind.
At the start of the quarantine, I didn't have, because I mean, you are pretty much looking at my entire space that I use for both like work and relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bedroom over there, but
yeah, I didn't used to spend time in my bedroom either. But then I got a roommate.
I had the habit of changing into clothes and then changing into workout clothes when I was done with work. And even if I didn't work out, that was just like signified the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it could be anything. But I think I've noticed the biggest changes with just like the tiny amount of movement somewhere.
Yeah. Putting yourself in a different environment, even if it's just looking at the opposite side of the room. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm reading through these book club questions and seeing if any of them are.
Hey, so I wanted to share what was going to be my advice or suggestion for Beckett, which I now realize is really bad advice and suggestions for Beckett, but for just the crowd. Beckett, do we have anything on the socials? Any questions?
No.
Okay. So I want to make sure I left time for that. So the thing I have to do, so maintaining a really good sleep schedule is a really important thing for me. And what I have to do is I have to have no blue screens like for an hour-ish before I go to bed, right? And so when you were talking about reading, what I do is I have like probably half a dozen books right now right by my bed. And so then the blue screens are supposed to stop. And then for an hour, I'm in bed reading, and then I go to sleep, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not doing so good with that because my major weakness is YouTube and all the crazy things you can do in music culture by doing searches in different languages and just crap like that, right? And so that's I'm not, but now it's interesting that I need to think about a way using the book, the Atomic Habits book, to make that break clean. Because sometimes I do it really early and ahead of time, and I'm a good boy, right? And then sometimes it's like 5 minutes before it's time for bed. Okay, YouTube goes off, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I'm confident that I just got to think about it and look for something, and I'll come up with something really useful. And and the one of the things I wanted to say, I'm not suggesting I'm wrapping this up, but as a researcher, the, one of the best, how do you say, measures whether somebody likes a product or service is if they would recommend it to somebody else. And I would definitely recommend Atomic Habits. And I have friends where I'm just like waiting for them to like ask me, you need this book, but it's kind of rude to go, hi, how are you? And but seriously, I think because and it's been sort of validated in this chat that I don't think it's just for me. I think it's for quite possibly anybody, and no matter like the type of person you are, lawyer, doctor, musician, and so so for me that's like a big deal. Like books, I'm like, I just read Bono's book. I love it. Do I recommend it to everybody? I don't know. If you like Bono on YouTube, sure, go for it. And the best part of the book is all of his activism that he's done over the years. And if you like that stuff, oh my God, you got to read it. But yeah, I don't go around recommending books to people, or thinking I need to recommend this book to people, but I do with this one. So there. And then I have a book that I want to recommend to everybody before we leave. So much for my theory about that. I don't go around recommending books to people. I'm enthusiastic about books without specifically recommending them for people. Rick Rubin has a new book on creativity that it's like, I love Rick Rubin. Like, it's like, take my money, God. And he's an interesting creative in that he's not really good at the thing he's not classically trained in the thing that he's wonderful at. Right? He's like a record producer who doesn't really play a musical instrument, but he's such an amazing listener, like at so many levels, an amazing intuitive listener that it kind of doesn't matter. Him playing guitar would just sort of get in the way of that shit.
Yeah, I think most musicians wouldn't make good producers. Like, it's a very different skill to, between producing music and creating it.
I have failed my entire life at combining synths and my flute because those are just two different things in my head, even though they are the same thing. They're both music, but they are just so vastly different in my head that they just don't correlate. Also, I mean, I brought up the whole like find something that you're good at. Like, don't try to force yourself into a hole that you don't quite fit in, sort of thing. And I think that's absolutely in that line of he's not a like he's not going to play an instrument, but he's really, really good at listening to things. Is very much like finding your niche and finding something you enjoy and then doing what you do well in something that you enjoy.
Yeah, and to kind of bring that back to the topic at hand with the book that we're talking about.
Artful transition. Very good. Points.
Forming a new habit in a way that is desirable for you, like making it attractive, making it easy. Like if you're finding, and that's why I started reading books on my phone, is because I would be on my phone anyway. So I know like looking at blue light is not supposed to be something that you do right before bed or whatever, but like literally I won't do it otherwise.
Yeah.
So,
I was going to ask Miguel about your turn off YouTube a certain amount of time. Do you like have an alarm on your phone, or is it just like, hope I stop?
Yeah, but I try to go, I try to go to sleep at the same time, or at least within an hour. Like I don't sleep in on weekends. I'll sleep in maybe at most an hour. I know when it's supposed to happen. It just like if I've got really good content, it just doesn't friggin' matter. Oh my God, Motion Dashi Allegre just posted a video, right? It's like I'm sorry, it's Carnival season in Rio, so like you're getting all the cool juicy videos, getting ready.
I have an alarm on my phone that's meant to go off at like 9:30, which is when I take medication. And initially the goal was to like turn off all like stop watching TV and all of that around 9:30. And I immediately programmed myself that the alarm would go off and then I would just not do anything, including take my medication. And then I would have to like remember to do that later on. And I like had to change the sound of the ringtone and like change it up because I just like couldn't keep it going. That's why I asked about the alarm, is because for some reason that is something that I trained as a habit and then immediately turned into a bad habit.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good tip for like combating that though, is like making it something different. Because like if you make all your alarms sound the same as your wake up alarm, then that's going to have a different trigger in your body.
There's an app and it's called Be Real. And it's just like at one point in the day, it will just like send you a notification and you're supposed to take a photo in 2 minutes of it. And it's just supposed to be like a combat against like social media of like, let's show what people are actually doing instead of like what you are manipulating. The
TikTok is trying to do that too now.
Yeah. I use it. I only have like 3 people on there, and that's like the amount of people that I kind of want to just see what my day is like randomly in the middle of the day. It has a very specific sound on my phone that goes off when it does it. It's different than anything else. I didn't set it. It's just the app itself has its own notification sound. And that is probably the social media that I update the most. I mean, granted, it's once a day. But
yeah. Once a day is a good habit.
Yeah, if my phone rings and it's a message, I will be like, "Oh, it's a message. Cool." But when I hear that beep, I'm like, "Oh crap, I only have 2 minutes to do this." And like it's 3 people and nobody, it's mostly just pictures of my computer. Like nobody nobody wants to see it, but it's just like in my brain, like it's very sound oriented of like I hear that sound and I know this is exactly what I have to do. I have Pavlov dog myself.
Well, and that's why a lot of apps have their own sounds for notifications for that reason.
Yeah. So in terms of like it might be helpful to just like have an alarm with that very specific sound that's not used for anything else, because it will just like, yeah.
Hey, so going back to the researcher in me, so Beckett, would you recommend this book to other people?
Maybe under very specific circumstances.
Cool.
I think a better question on top of that is, would you normally would you recommend a different book to somebody else?
Specifically about this? I don't
just in general. Like are you big into recommending books to people?
Not really.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I'm not really big into like recommending books to people, even though I read a lot and I like to tell people what I'm reading.
I think it's such a personal thing. Like different things resonate with different people. And so, just because you like it doesn't mean your friends are going to like it.
Because I also don't know if I would off the top of my head, I'm not sure if I would be like, oh my God, you guys have to read this book. But I've also never done that for a book ever. So for the researcher in you, I feel like I need to state that as the statement. That being said, I think the tools that are in it, I would probably bring up to people in like conversation, depending on what it is, or the methods of it.
For me, it's more like it's a lot easier to recommend other things like TV shows or podcasts or things that are easier to consume. Books are such a commitment. It's really hard for me to recommend them to people. Like, unless I know that they are readers, which I don't think I have a lot of readers in my life, except my dad. My dad's a big reader, but
I read one book this month, and that is like an all-time low.
Yeah, I mean, I don't read a lot anymore anyway either. So it's hard for me to recommend books to people. But like, I don't know. I think if somebody were having very specific issues with habit building and things like that, yeah, sure, I'd recommend it. But I'd have to know the context. I wouldn't just like walk up to any friend and be like, you have to read this book.
All right. So we have been on for an hour.
Yeah.
I don't really have a lot else. I feel like we've talked a lot about like what's worked in this book and what hasn't worked in this book and all of that. So I guess to end it, any final thoughts? Anything that we didn't bring up that's just pressing on your mind?
I just want to share my favorite quote
Oh,
from the book.
Yeah.
If I can find it again. I scrolled away.
oh, while she's doing that, I can say mine. I still struggle with the title, right? I get, how do you say, intellectually what he's trying to achieve with the title, but every time I hit the title, I have a speed bump. Or when I'm like trying to decipher for somebody, you know?
Why is that?
Because I think atomic is like atomic bomb and not as small.
I mean, it's
Right.
both, is what it's supposed to be.
I know he means it
Yeah.
both ways, but it's still cognitive dissonance. I just like for me.
I
it's like
had
the
a
title is
problem.
just like,
I had a problem with his inversions. So because every single one, he lists the rule and then he lists the opposite. So if you're going to make it attractive, make bad habits unattractive. But then like through it, he's like, yes, and this inversion of the third law. And I'm like, I see what you're trying to do, but it's just not registering in my head, his use of inversions.
Are you thinking of inversion like a musical chord as opposed to what he's doing?
I think of inversion as so the way he's doing it is flip the rule on its head sort of thing.
Yeah.
And when I think of inversion of like a rule, I think of like how you're getting around it. And so like it just didn't quite correlate in my head.
Oh yeah.
But that's the title. Is that like a thought, or did you have a favorite quote?
Are you asking me or Beckett?
I was asking you.
Oh God, I can't even no, I don't have a favorite quote. Sorry.
So my favorite quote is habits do not restrict freedom, they create it. And then building habits in the present allows you to do more of what you want in the future.
This is something that I fully agree with and think about often, because I like to get things done quickly or a little bit every single day. And I know a lot of people who don't have that, and it gets very frustrating because I'm like, all right, I've done this and this and this. And they're like, how did you get so much done? Like, I didn't.
Yeah. And like, so as someone with ADHD and shiny object syndrome, it's really hard for me to build habits. And so that's where this was very helpful in looking at them in those tiny ways that make them atomic and make them, bite-sized and easy to digest. And just, and the habit stacking, I didn't even realize that I was already doing that. Like, especially now that I have a full-time job and I have less time for things, I'm like, okay, so when do I have time to do the dishes? While dinner's cooking. So, I'm already cooking dinner. I'm already in the kitchen. May as well do the dishes. So, without even realizing it, I was already doing it.
My favorite quote from the book, and I brought this up, I think it was like one of the first things that I said. My favorite quote in the book is actually him quoting somebody else. It was, he started weightlifting and he asked the weightlifting coach what separated the people who like went on to the people who like quit early on. And he said, or rather what makes people better. At some point, it comes down to who can handle the boredom of training every day, doing the same lifts over and over and over again. That was his thing for what separates, world-class weightlifters from just the everyday Joe in the gym.
Yeah.
And that's totally true for music. Oh my God.
It's true for anything.
It's so true of like also making that thing that is the repetitive, boring task more desirable. because people would always ask me when I was a fitness instructor, like, how do I get in better shape? I was always every single time tell them, do what makes, you know, sense and is fun for you. Because if you don't feel like you're working out, you're going to want to do it more. And that's why aerial was so great for, you know, staying in shape, because it didn't feel like work. It just felt like play.
Yep.
But you do get, like, when it gets to a certain level, you do have to do the nitty gritty little, you know, leg lifts and the tasks that are no fun in order to get to the next level to do the fun things.
I can only handle about 10 minutes of drills before, like, I am like, when is this done? And so, like, when I mean, I think we actually, like, spread out the training when I trained with you. So, like, we do, like, 20 minutes of conditioning, but it was pretty slow.
I did a lot of conditioning, but I gave people a lot of time to get it done. Yeah.
Yeah. For hula hoops, I have to do 10 minutes of drills. And then the rest of the time is me just putting on music and seeing what happens.
Yeah. Well, I just had to keep reminding myself, and this would be, you know, translatable to anything that you want to get better at, whether it's like, you know, habit building or music or whatever it is, writing, whatever. Doing the just remembering in the back of your head when you're doing the things that are unfun, the boring, repetitive tasks that come along with training, whatever it is that you're training, will get you to the next level to be able to do the things that are actually fun. So it's not about, you know, feeling good in the moment. It's about the payoff that will come with time, which is harder to visualize and to conceptualize. Our brains like an immediate reward more.
I mean, yeah, I think there's an entire chapter in the book about that.
But, you know, it just visualize, and that's why visualization is very helpful for me and for a lot of people, is like, if you can visualize yourself doing the thing that you want to be doing, and knowing that that outcome is what's going to come with the boring, repetitive task that you're doing at the moment, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is why I also do a lot of drills while watching TV.
Distracting yourself from doing the boring things. Yeah, that works too.
At least when it is like the hugely repetitive thing, like a huge chunk of my hula hoop practice is just like making sure I know the proper technique for switching hands.
Or for me, I've been wanting to, here's one that I can share. I've been wanting to get back in the habit of practicing poi. And so what I've been doing is distracting myself by, when I go for walks, because I like to like get outside sometimes, like during my work week, and just go for like a half an hour walk during my lunch break, because I work from home. It makes it easy. I take my poi with me. And so I'm like playing and swinging poi while I'm walking. And
wait, what is it? What is the word?
Poi. They're balls on the end of strings, and you like around and do tricks, and it's based on a Hawaiian thing.
We should start getting back into doing our park stretches and bringing poi and hoops, because I want to get more into juggling, and I can't juggle hoops in my house.
Oh my gosh, I need to get some contact poi. I've been wanting to do that forever.
Yeah. So I've been practicing with balls in the house, but I don't have the space for to do hula hoops, so I think I need to go outside.
Let's do it.
Hey, Rebecca, I have a Pomodoro variation about, what was the thing you were saying that you can only handle 10 minutes of it? It was a really physically taxing thing.
My hula hoop drills.
Yeah, so physically taxing. So I know I've mentioned this in the group, but from Eric Forrester used to teach classical percussion at USC, and he told me to put your practice, your music practice, the drumming practice, into something like, I do 12 and 3, so that 12 minutes of working, 3 minutes off, so it's like a half of a Pomodoro, but you can easily make it 10 and whatever, 10 and 5. And for me, what happened with that is that 12 became really intense, because I would be doing something that I go, oh God, I suck at this today. I don't want to suck, but I can suck for 10 minutes or 12 minutes. I'm sorry. I can make it to 12 minutes and then go, right? And so even though, and I've got more of these little breaks throughout the whole session, the 12 minutes is more jam-packed than any, even when I was doing Pomodoro, like trying to do 25 and 5 with drumming, the 12 minutes is sort of like, I can buck up and do 12 minutes. Whereas like if I'm doing something on drums and I'm like just sucking wind, I'm not going to make it to 25 minutes. It's just go like, I'm going to do something else. Okay.
Mhm.
And then the other thing, his suggestion was that each, and this is specific to music and maybe not so much to hula, but it's like each 12 minutes is a different thing to give your brain a break. So I might do warm up loosening drills, and then I might do reading, and then I might do a different kind of warm up, and then I might do, playing songs or transcribing songs. But that it was also just like messing with your mind in a bit so that it didn't become too repetitive.
Right.
That's actually kind of exactly what I do, both in my flute practice and in my hula hoop practice. It's just different time scales. There's something that is actually brought up in Atomic Habits, so I can relate it back to there, where
Oh my
he
gosh.
talks about, it's not for, I think he talked about like either Hemingway doing this where he would write for a certain amount of time, and as soon as that time was done, it doesn't matter if it was good or not, he had to stop. When I was in college for a lyric writing class, I had a teacher do object writing that exact way of you had to write for 10 minutes and then you had to stop, because at about like 8 or 9 minutes is when you start to get really into it and then you stop on a high. So that's actually like a technique that a lot of people use of like, you just have to do it for this amount of time. In my flute practice, I do that I have a book of drills that I run, and some days I'm slower than others, but it doesn't matter. After 5 minutes, I have to stop doing them because in my head, I hate doing them, but I can do it for 5 minutes. For hula hoops, it's more of a hit style thing. So like high intensity interval training where I do 50 seconds on, 10 seconds off. And there's 10 different drills. And even if it's a drill that I suck at that day, I still can't get the hoop to go from my knees to my waist, but I try for 50 seconds every day.
Yeah. I used to do a variation of that in aerial where it didn't matter how good or bad my form was for that day. I always had to do 10 of each drill.
Yeah.
And even if they sucked, because it's the habit forming and the repetition that's going to build the muscle to get it to be easier in the future.
You have to like separate them. Like one is habit building and like the other one is actual like form checking. Those are two very different things in my head.
Yeah. They have something exactly like that for distance. For running, it's not just distance running, where you sprint, you jog, and you walk at different like time intervals. And it's a really great holistic workout because usually you don't do all three of those things together, especially sprinting and jogging,
That's true, because if you practice things with bad form, you're going to build that habit instead.
Yeah, the whole thing about getting my or practicing hoop splits is probably a better one with this. Of hoop splits are where I have more than one hoop and I have to separate them. And for 50 seconds, I just have to work on it. And like, it's more about the process of doing the action. But I also have days where I'm like, oh, I need to do form check on this and like actually work on the technique of it. There's one that's like more thought intensive and the other one is like, just do it.
Yeah.
Because if I ever have to perform it, I have to just do it.
Right. I think like the difference between doing conditioning drills versus drilling a trick.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a lot of things that I can take from this book now and apply to my.
Yeah, absolutely. I also find, and we've talked about this before, Rebecca, is I get more, like I do more things. It's better for me to be in like a class setting or at least have like a partner to do things with rather than just doing them on my own. So I've actually, like this whole time in quarantine, the one skill that I could have kept up with besides poi is flexibility, and I just didn't. And so now what I've been doing is forcing myself to go back to yoga classes.
Yeah.
And it's been really, really good. So
it's like an accountability partner. I actually hate his style of accountability in Atomic Habits. I think that classes are a much better because he does like accountability contracts where if you fail to do the contract, you owe somebody something.
Yeah, that wouldn't work for me.
And that doesn't work for me. I'd usually just be like, oh, well, I guess you're getting some money.
I would just be like, whatever, I don't care. I'm not paying you anyway.
Yeah. So I feel like, but actually like paying and going to a class and going somewhere.
Yeah.
Again, we're back to the physical environment.
Right. Changing your environment. And also not just that, but like being held accountable by somebody else. So like if I don't show up for class, not only am I losing out on that money, but they're expecting me to be there. And you know, how much did I hate no-shows when I was teaching? The worst. So
yeah. I mean, that's why I got these clubs together, is because I'm like, well, there's other people that are there for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
I meant to end this call about 15 minutes ago.
Let's do it now. Thanks, you guys, for your time. This is a fun chat, and
Yeah.
I felt really guilty not being up on the book when I
No,
write.
you're
But
fine.
I'm glad
I
I came
didn't
in.
complete the homework either, Miguel, if it makes you feel better.
And I'm sure this is something that we will continue to discuss on our Saturday phone calls. So it's definitely not the last that we've heard of it. But like I said at the start of the call, I am going to make a poll on the group, include some books. I'm going to leave that up until the end of the month, and then whatever book has the most votes on it will be what we read.
Awesome.
What's the next category?
New fiction, so 21st century fiction, which sounds really, really fun in sci-fi, honestly.
I wonder if I read anything that's new.
I have a couple new books. I haven't read any of them yet.
My daughter got me this amazing book for Christmas. It's all they're all interviews with Ursula K. Le Guin.
Oh, dope.
People buy my books all the time because I used to be such a bookworm, and I'm like, oh, thanks, I'll read this. Never.
I don't think that there's any really new Ursula K. Le Guin books. I think
she's dead.
Yeah.
That'll slow you down. But she does have some modern stuff. She was at least poetry.
I'm trying to like think of like what the most recent book is. I don't think it was published after 2000, but I might be wrong. I mean but that's also nonfiction. But that being said, I really like Ursula K. Le Guin as well.
And add it to the submission form.
It's not any of the 3 books I have right now.
There you go.
So I will go ahead and post those in the group right as soon as we hang up here. And other than that, I guess I will talk to at least Beckett tomorrow morning.
Yeah. And for any of you out there watching on internet land, get in our Facebook group, not over here, but over here. And if you have any suggestions for books that we should read, or movies or music that we should do for any of our multimedia clubs, you can submit on the form that's pinned in the Facebook group.
Yeah.
So.
And on that note, I hope you guys all have a lovely night.
Likewise.
Thanks so much for putting this together, Rebecca.
Yeah. Anytime.
Thanks for coming.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.